Hello and welcome to another captaincy video and podcast of the 2021 season from Fantasy Football Scout. It's game week 3 already. Seemingly everyone scored massively last week, but just an assist for our top pick, Aubameyang. My name is Joe, and joining me to see if we can do any better this week is David. David, how are you?
Well, as you said, everyone seemed to be scoring last week. That's true of a lot of the players. It's also true of a lot of fantasy managers and was not true of me. I had something like 34 points. Nobody in my team scored a goal. Yay. So, yeah, one of the most disastrous weeks I've ever had in fantasy, but it's fine. It's game week 2, game week 3. I'm holding my nerve. I'm not playing my wild card yet. I'm eyeing up, well, I guess we're starting with Chelsea, aren't we? I'm eyeing up Chelsea to dig me out of a big hole. So we go again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, there's some tough decisions this week, but lots of top teams have potentially tough matches. But that's not the case with Chelsea. They've got West Brom, who look like prime whipping boys. So this Saturday clash, it could put Werner among the candidates. We did say at the beginning of the season, it won't be long before Werner's at the top of decision making here.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
not necessarily saying he will be the best captain choice this week, but we think he could be. So that's why we're putting Werner at the top here. West Brom, whipping boys. Werner, he's looking good actually. So what do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. We said that this is the kind of guy who's going to be up there when there's a good fixture, and here we are. I think the thing with him is it primarily is, of course, about West Brom. So I guess we'll start with them first. In 2 matches so far, they've conceded 24 shots in the box, which is the joint most in the league. Leeds have conceded the same number, but they have faced Liverpool, and most of that 24 was away at Anfield. So I think we can allow them that. That's fine. We won't rip into them too much for that. Whereas West Brom have obviously conceded that many shots against a Leicester team where Vardy only shot from the penalty spot, and then obviously against Everton as well. Now, of course, they did play a decent chunk of that Everton game with 10 men, but they were still kind of already getting a bit done over even when they had 11. The interesting thing with West Brom is that in the first 2 games of the season so far, they've played with a 5-man defense, which is I think they're playing 5-4-1, I think, and I'm led to believe that's not really something they're very comfortable in. It's not a formation they used last year. So I suppose, maybe Bilic, if he realizes that and changes it to something they're more used to against Chelsea, that might help them out a little bit. But at this stage of the season, we can only really captain based on what we have in front of us, and what we have in front of us is a West Brom team that has conceded that many shots, but crucially also has conceded 2 penalties so far, which is I think the second most. I think the team, ironically, that's actually conceded the most is Leeds. But you'd argue a slight element of misfortune about the first of those. But either way, West Brom are right up there, conceded 2 penalties in the first 2 matches, and who's already won 2 penalties so far this season, a penalty in each match won by Werner and his ridiculously lightning pace. Even managed to win a penalty off Liverpool's new man Thiago, who obviously played incredible, but still gave away a penalty. It doesn't matter who you are. Werner's so quick that if he's going to nip in there, he's going to win a lot of penalties this year. So even in a game where Chelsea maybe struggle to unlock them a little bit because they still don't have Ziyech back, perhaps we'll talk about him in a second, but even in a game where they perhaps don't offer a great deal, like they did against Liverpool, there's still a chance that Werner's just going to burst through the middle, win a foul, get a penalty, just based on what we've seen in both games so far. And this is a team that's conceding penalties. Now, obviously, that could be helpful in terms of assists, but also this might finally be when Werner actually gets to start taking those penalties, because Jorginho obviously has been taking them so far. But a terrible penalty against Liverpool. You'd be loath to let him have another go. But also, he wasn't very good against Liverpool either. With a few more reinforcements coming back into midfield, perhaps Jorginho could be one of the ones to miss out. Kovacic and Kante seem a little bit more likely to hold on to their place in midfield. So if Jorginho's not there, or even if he is and he's missed last week, and we know Werner has a fantastic penalty record in Germany, this could be when he actually gets to start taking his own penalties, which obviously is going to reward fantasy managers even more. So that alone, I think, is enough reason to captain Werner potentially. But also, there's all the other factors of I think we have to keep an eye on what happens with the rest of the team. So the press conferences this week I think are really important, because I think Chelsea have lacked a little bit of creativity in the first two games when they haven't had Ziyech. If Ziyech is going to be fit for this game, then they're going to be much, much better at sort of unlocking a deep block, which West Brom are probably going to deploy for this game, because I think they're going to have to. So if Ziyech is there, then the case for Werner gets even stronger. If Pulisic is there, the case for Werner gets even stronger, or even for any of these players, because the more players that just get back into that fold for Chelsea that either have creativity like Ziyech or sort of a bit of penetrative burst that Pulisic can offer with his pace and his guile and his ability on the ball, all of that is just going to ask so many questions of this West Brom defence, which, as we know, isn't that capable at the moment. So definitely keep an eye on those things. I am just going to mention Havertz briefly, because he's still in my team. Obviously didn't manage a single shot or a single key pass against Liverpool, but just from the eye test off the ball, because sometimes it's easy when you're looking at eye tests to look at what's happening on the ball. I was trying to see what's happening off the ball in other areas. Havertz has actually been making some really nice runs and has been finding himself in lots of space, which we know he's good at, because we've seen him do it in Germany in teams that know how to find him in that space. And this is another thing why Ziyech, either being fit or not fit this weekend, plays a key role in Chelsea's ability to get through this West Brom defence. It's so annoying being a Havertz owner, watching Havertz ghost into all of these different places in the box, either on the back post or, of course, he was the false nine against Liverpool, finding the space, but nobody can find him. If Ziyech gets back in the team, or Pulisic gets back in the team, then I'd be a lot more confident that those runs he's going to make are going to get rewarded with the pass that sets him up with an opportunity to score. So I'm probably not going to captain Havertz, but all of these different factors for Chelsea, if they go the right way this week, it's very hard to look past Werner. And then, of course, if they can get Havertz on the ball as well, I think that helps Werner too, because we know that Havertz can set up chances too. So, yeah, lots to talk about with Chelsea. Werner, great shout, but I wouldn't rule out some of the other options if you're looking for a differential.
Yeah, I mean, Werner, he's my captain at the moment as it stands, but as we'll discuss, there's lots of other candidates here. I mean, what I like about him for the captaincy is he ticks the two boxes. He himself is posting good stats. He's on form. He looks good. Meanwhile, the team he's against, West Brom, look absolutely diabolical. And they're in a bit of a league of their own, really, in terms of whipping boys. Early days, just 2 matches, but they are the whipping boys. So here's the table. There we go. They've conceded 8 bigger chances. Southampton have conceded 7 and Leeds 6 there. But what's really striking is their expected goals conceded. So we're looking at the quality of the shots they're facing as well. And they're letting in a lot of those. They're expected to concede 6.8, so nearly 7 goals. Around 7 goals they should have been conceded. So those big chances conceded is bang on for what their performance deserves. Meanwhile, Southampton, for example, have conceded 7 big chances, but their expected goals conceded is around half that. So they're, in fact, a little bit unlucky to concede so many, whereas West Brom are getting exactly what they deserve, which is absolutely hammered. Meanwhile, Werner is on my early goals imminent table. 6 shots, 5 in the box. These are good stats. These are good stats for a striker. He's earning penalties too, as you mentioned, earned 1 in each of his matches. He just looks, to me, weirdly, he's going to be seen as a slight differential captaincy by many. But to me, he looks the absolute safest Dullard pick for the captaincy, because I cannot believe he's going to walk away with this point with no points, because West Brom will concede and he's the main man for Chelsea.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I also kind of think the venue probably plays a little bit of a part in this. I know that fans aren't here at the moment, but I always feel a little bit more confident of Chelsea away from home against one of these teams than I do at home. Just simply because they seem to just be a little bit more... The shackles are off when they're away from home, this Chelsea team, because they're sort of quite a young team. Yeah. And that sometimes sort of plays into it. I mean, Chelsea wouldn't be the only team in the country I've seen over the last number of years be a little bit more fresh and a little bit more ruthless away from home than they are in front of their own fans, or there aren't any of those at the moment, but in terms of like the pressure of winning at home, and it's easier for a team like West Brom to set up deep away than it will be at home. West Brom, I think, will still cause Chelsea problems in this game, because we saw that they could do that to Everton, and we know that Chelsea have defensive problems. So I think West Brom are going to come out of the traps as often as they deem necessary. But even that still helps Chelsea. You know, a team away from home with loads of pace, that just seems to be like a match made in heaven, because Werner's going to have more space to work in.
It's
really,
interesting what you were saying about home and away as well, because obviously the lack of fans, you would think it wouldn't make much difference. But I was listening to some of the commentary on Saturday, and obviously they usually have ex-pros commentating, and the comments that were being made were about the home and away making a difference, and it does even without fans. And it's all about the familiarity of home, the dressing rooms, the ability to stay with your family at home, because chances are you live near your home team, obviously. So the team that you play for, and so it's all that familiarity. It just puts the player at ease, and it makes them feel more comfortable. But if you're a younger player and you're just happy to get out there, and you're happy to, hopefully you'll get picked by Lampard, because there's a lot of rotation in Chelsea's ranks. Yes, it would figure that away there wouldn't be such a need to have all those home comforts. They're just happy to get out there. Whereas the bigger players, the Salahs, for example, these are megastars who like their home comforts. But anyway, that's the theory. Just so I'll put that in there. Staying with London, the Premier League's new creative force. I don't know whether you heard about these guys. Harry Kane is amazing number 10. He's the assisting KDB of the South. And new sensational goal scorer Son take on Newcastle at home. Obviously, they had a fantastic game at the weekend. We wonder whether we can replicate that. But we've been here before with Spurs. Can we trust them? What do we think? Son or Kane for the captaincy? They look good shouts based on last weekend's evidence.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. I got to say, I think it's really tricky with Spurs, because, I mean, I feel like I want to clarify something on Son before we get too far, because obviously I spent a lot of the summer highlighting how I felt that Kane was the better option compared to Son. Just simply because of what we saw in Project Restart and what we've seen mostly under Mourinho. When Kane and Son were fit together, Kane would play the central role. He'd get more touches in the box. He'd shoot more. He'd get the bigger chances. He was the goal threat, and Son was the creativity guy. But he was always hugging the chalk. And if that's how they line up against Newcastle, then I think that obviously damages Son's appeal. The reason that he obviously did so well for the Southampton game was because, for whatever reason, Mourinho decided to change things up and basically play both of them as centre forwards. And when that actually happens, Son is just blisteringly destructive, right? Because we have seen that before, but it is rare. It's really rare for Mourinho to play them up front together. So if he's going to do that, then Son looks incredible, because compared to the two, obviously, if they're both playing centre forward, he's the one who's cheaper. He's the one who gets more points for everything he does, basically. Yeah. So take that into account. But I suppose it just has to come with the caveat of Mourinho doesn't usually play two centre forwards in that way. Maybe he felt that was what was needed for that game. Will he do the same against Newcastle? Maybe. Obviously, Son scored 4 goals, so he's got like a pretty good reason to do it again. But this is Mourinho, and no one ever really understands him. So who knows?
Well, it was that high line. I mean, anyone could manage Spurs at that. Southampton were playing such a high line. Play 2 up front, because you're going to just mop up here.
Will Newcastle operate the same line? Probably not. I mean, they've obviously just come off the back of a really, really disappointing 3-0 home defeat to Brighton in a game that they would have felt like they should have got something out of, because they played so well in the first game of the season. So they will not want to sort of take too many chances in this game. I think Newcastle would take a draw. So they're gonna sit deep. We know it's something that they're capable of. So it kind of goes back to the point we were just making just before about when you're the away team and you have strong counter-attacking players like Son. It's almost easier for you to do the damage in an away match against a team that is playing a high line, because they're the home team and they want to dictate possession, than it is in a home game when the other team are just going to sit back and defend. So I'm not expecting Son to hit the dizzy heights of 4 goals again. That doesn't mean he's a bad option. It just means that you just have to expect this game to be completely different. And I think a few people have made some good points on Twitter recently about how it can be really easy to sort of read more into the first 2 games than perhaps we should do, because there's a lot of variance between players and teams and lots of different factors that we're just not aware of. Sort of the trends that haven't exactly sort of kind of set themselves in yet. So just kind of assuming that because Son scored 4 last week, he's now the best captaincy option for this week is a bit too blunt. And I think, this is the sort of game that that will be an interesting, I guess, eye test for us to work out. Can he deliver in the away games when the team's playing a high line? Can he deliver in the home games when the team's playing a deep block? If he passes the test, then moving forward, then his captaincy strength gets stronger, of course. But for me, it's just almost like a little bit too many unknowns, all in the context of the fact that Chelsea away against West Brom, that just looks like a better fixture to me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just looking at some of the stats here, last 2 game weeks, Newcastle have given up 2 big chances. 2. Southampton have 7. We've spoke about them before, just below West Brom there. So completely different sort of defence, completely different sort of game. I agree. I mean, I said it on the Scoutcast. I think it was the first one where Son, I'm not interested in if he's hugging the touchline, but I am interested in if he's playing up front, obviously. So as we can see, we don't know where he's going to play. Is Son a good? He's an option, but I don't think he's as good as West Brom and Werner. There is one other player I'm thinking of, and that is Kevin De Bruyne. And I think, as was seen last season, he is an absolutely astute perma-captain. Just captain him and just make the game easy. He's at home to Leicester. On paper, not as easy as Werner's game, but it's Kevin De Bruyne, and as we found out last night, and it does seem to be the way, he has been tasked with more of a number 10 role. That could be in David Silva's absence. It could be that with David Silva gone, Kevin De Bruyne has taken that mantle of driving the attack there. He's done that from a slightly deeper role with enormous success. When he's up front, not completely up front in the number 9 role, but if he's in the number 10 role, then he's even more integral to the attack. He's going to get even more points. I mean, anyway. So I mean, there's just some stats just before you speak about De Bruyne. I just quickly looked at the stats from him last night. So 1 game. So against Wolves, who are a very tidy defence indeed, traditionally, De Bruyne managed 6 chances, 4 goal attempts. Every single one of his goal attempts was on target. And he minutes per chance, he's got a chance every 15 minutes. Oh my... These are really good stats. These are sort of unusual stats because they're really high on the chances created. They're really high on the shots as well. So, anyway, what do you think? KDB, captain?
I think the thing with KDB, as you said, is look at that Wolves defence, right? That, for me, is the true test of how good KDB can be. Because, since Game Week 25 of last season, and then we include Game Week 1 in that, because I think it's probably changed now after last night. Wolves are best in the league for fewest shots in the box conceded, best in the league for fewest big chances conceded, best in the league for shots on target conceded. They're the best XGC. They're the most clean sheets. So they were the best defence in the league by a long, long way. And Man City just tore them apart. Now, it wasn't just KDB, because I've got to be honest, I think I thought Bolly had a really bad game, which for him is quite rare. He really just couldn't cope with the runs that Sterling was making. So then obviously that kind of started to sort of stretch the team all over the place, opening up sort of pockets of space for KDB to work in. Rodri and Fernandinho forming a kind of 2-man patrol in front of the defence was really great, because the signing of Ake obviously means that Fernandinho could go back into midfield where he's best. So everything was built from the back, and obviously I know Wolves kind of felt their way back into the game, but if De Bruyne can do that against Wolves, like I said, the best defence of the league since whenever Game Week 25 was, pre-lockdown anyway, then who cares who he plays against now, because he's just played the best defence. So whatever happens next, he should be able to be even better. He's the penalty taker in a team that's going to win lots of penalties. Leicester, I don't particularly trust their defence. I haven't trusted their defence for a long time. So, and then of course the other thing was coming into that game, because we're all doing it, aren't we? We're doing a Aubameyang to a Man City midfielder this week, right? I was, because of the way the Project Restart had happened. I'd been looking at Sterling over De Bruyne. I hadn't made a decision yet. Monday night was obviously a big part of that. Even though Sterling is normally better away from home, it didn't matter. De Bruyne still outscored him and was comfortably better, as you said, all because he's now playing that number 10 role. Everything about the way the team's worked has completely freed him of any shackles of looking over his shoulder. and he's just everything in front of him, driving into the space, creating chances, shooting, what have you. So if Sterling's normally better away from home, but De Bruyne is still bested him on Monday night, and this game's at home where De Bruyne is usually better anyway, he's the obvious one to sign. Will I captain him? Maybe, but I still think I'm going to go with Werner. But I think from here on in, De Bruyne is going to be, top 2 or 3 for the captaincy just every week, because if he doesn't have to worry about defending anymore, then he is seriously scary this season.
Yeah, indeed. Let's race through some of the other picks as well. So Liverpool at home to Arsenal. They've given up. Arsenal have given up 3 big chances. I wonder. So, which says they can be breached, but might not be a haul. Salah at home though, different beast as he is away. I wonder if it is that home comforts thing. It'd be interesting to interview Salah and ask him about that from an FPL point of view. Plus, across the first 2 game weeks, Salah's had 13 shots and shot in the box every 18 minutes. It's even better than KDB. So, I think he's a really good captaincy shout as well, because Arsenal are there for the taking. I'm not sure it's as good as Werner and KDB, but I think Salah's a really good captaincy shout. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he's a good difference maker this week. I'm probably not going to consider him. I think this Arsenal team, I think I'd slightly disagree with the idea that they're there for the taking. I think Liverpool still win.
They can be breached. I'm not. There's not going to be.
I see.
They're not going to be.
Yeah.
They're not whipping boys.
Yeah.
They will concede.
Yeah. I think I'd agree, but I think we all just sort of have to get used to the fact, really, that Arsenal are actually not that bad anymore, especially at the back. I mean, a lot of it might depend on Tierney and how long he's out for, but Arteta seems to have got this Arsenal defence quite organised, and they've been seemingly more and more organised with each game. With the back 3, I think Holding, Gabriel, and when he's fit, Tierney has been kind of what we feel like might be the first choice, because obviously Louise has been out. But I think Liverpool still score, but this isn't the Arsenal team that gets blown away by Liverpool anymore. So, and I think the key thing with Arsenal is it's not necessarily about they just defend better now. They're sort of like a more assured, more organised team. So that the way the whole team works together, I wouldn't put it past them to spend maybe 40 minutes of this game combined sort of feeling like they're on the front foot, in control of possession. I think Liverpool will still be the dominant team across the whole game, but Arsenal will have spells where they look like the better team, and that will help their defence, I think. So, yeah, I'm not going to captain Salah for this, but if he nicks something, then I think that might be the thing. If Tierney's not going to play, then I think Arsenal are a little bit weaker in that back 3, because I wouldn't trust Kolasinac as much as Tierney. Okay,
let's move on. Manchester United. I'd say that almost with a smirk, because they let so many people down the last game week. So they looked awful last week, and they played Brighton. But I was just wondering, is class permanent with this? And are Fernandes, Rashford, and Martial still good options, or should we just forget it all and captain Lamptey? What do we think?
It's annoying with Man United, because I think there was a lot made of them last week, and I didn't sign any of their players, so I don't feel like, sort of like I've necessarily made a mistake. So I'm actually really defending the actions of others here when I say I don't blame anyone for the kind of the big clamour for Man United players, because they looked so good last season, and I don't think the reason that they were poor against Palace was necessarily to do with how good a team they're going to be this season. I genuinely just think they weren't ready for the start of the season. Their preparation for that game was infinitely less productive for them than it was for Palace, who'd played 4 pre-season matches, had got their shape locked in. Hodgson is a manager who always has his team disciplined and ready for the start of the season anyway, but hand them that extra preparation, it's going to help them. They've obviously played 1 Premier League game already. Man United hadn't had any of that. I think they played 1 pre-season game last week against Villa, and that was it. They obviously had more international players involved in the break than Palace did, so Palace even got an extra kind of big spell of preparation there as well. I think generally speaking, Palace are always going to look better away from home against a top 6 side, because they know how to defend and they know how to counter-attack very well. Interestingly enough, since I think May 2015, Man City have won more games away at top 6 teams than any other Premier League team, with 10 away wins in those games, but second best for that is Palace with 9. So Man United looking bad at home against Palace, that's not a shock anymore, I suppose, because Palace just know how to go to a top 16 team and cause problems. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on Man United. I'm probably not going to sign a Man United player this week. I'm definitely not going to captain one. But in terms of sort of looking forward for the rest of the season, this United team will get there because they've got the players to do it, and we know they've got the form from last season to rely on as well. My only concern is then with the individuals. So I think that Fernandes is at a bit of a crossroads right now as a fantasy asset because of Van der Beek coming in. When he came on, he went straight into a number 10 role. Fernandes dropped deeper. Then he was already pretty deep anyway. He dropped even deeper when the new signing came on. So I think he might have a bit of a competition to be the number 10 this season. Even if he wins that battle, I think, the fact that the new signing's come in and scored straight off the bat, I think he's going to go straight into the team for this game. So maybe Fernandes plays deeper. So then for me, that would mean that actually I'm more excited about maybe owning a Martial or a Rashford, who we know are pretty locked into their roles in the team. I'm not saying that Fernandes isn't going to get benched. It's just he's not as locked into an advanced role as those other two players are. And I was kind of saying at the start of this pre-season anyway, Rashford, like even when Fernandes was playing number 10, still gets in the box a lot more than him, and now he's a midfielder. That all plays in his favour. So, not this week. Lots of ifs and buts about Man United. I think they'll get there eventually, but we just need to see what impact Van der Beek has on the team, I think, before we can pinpoint who's the best captaincy candidate from one game to the next. And also, let's not forget that Brighton aren't a bad team. They know how to defend quite well, so it's not exactly an easy fixture either.
It's on paper, it's a tougher match, tougher defence, weirdly. They've conceded, this is Brighton, conceded 2 big chances. Meanwhile, Palace have conceded 4. So on paper, they might be tougher. In personnel, they've got a better defence. They've got a big and solid unit of 3 centre backs, and they've got the likes of Lamptey as well. So, but the thing is, Brighton won't sit back. They're at home. That's not their style. That's not Potter's style. What they will do is they will go at them and they will leave spaces. Yet they've got a better defence on paper and better personnel there. So all of that sums up as we don't know. I don't know what the score will be. It could very well be 3-2 to either of them. We don't know. I don't think it's going to be a 0-0 though. So for me as a Martial owner, I had him in my Game Week 1 team just there on the bench anyway, so at least I didn't spend a transfer to get him in. But I'm happy to play him. I think, as you said, Manchester United players are a hold, but are they a captaincy consideration? I don't think so when you consider some of those others we're talking about. You mentioned Palace, and we both mentioned Palace defence there. But Everton face them next. And Everton, I don't know if you've noticed, they're getting pretty hard to ignore. They've got a new fabulous actual midfield, but Palace, as we've said, did a great job keeping Manchester United at bay. So if Palace are to be breached, I guess the likes of world-class Rodriguez and Richarlison and new Gary Lineker, Calvert-Lewin are going to be the ones to do it. But then again, it's Palace, so I don't know. What do we think?
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, so for someone like me, I don't own any Everton players yet. I'm actually still in 2 minds about signing one for this game. They look pretty good beyond that, but it's hard to Palace defense just looks so good. I think Hodgson, whenever he needs his defense to look good, it looks good. When they were in Project Restart and there was nothing relying on what they were doing anymore, and everyone was injured, I think he was just like, you know what, just take the day off. It doesn't matter that we have a game. Don't bother defending. It's fine, because it was safe. It's fine. But obviously, at the start of a new season, Hodgson wants to get 40 points, in the bag. He's already got 6, so good start. So plenty of confidence in that team. I think Everton have the tools to get through this Palace defence. Will they score 5? Highly unlikely. I think. I think Everton will win the game, but I can't see it being a whitewash because Palace know how to defend. I mean, it's a home game for Palace as well. Palace don't. It's kind of. Just going back to what I was saying about Palace and away games. Palace last year were much better on away from home because that's kind of when they came out and sort of actually bothered attacking a little bit more. In the home games, they're very happy just to sort of sit back and defend. And actually, do you know what? That gets easier to do when there's no fans in the stadium. Because when you sit back and defend in a home game and there's fans there, fans who have seen the team be a lot more attacking in the past, they get restless, they get annoyed, and every time someone makes a sideways pass instead of a forward pass, they start kind of getting on the back of the team, and that starts to get under their skin, and that encourages them to push out, right? No fans there. Palace can defend as much as they like because all the fans that are going, oh, why aren't you doing this and doing that? They're all at home. So it means that, they can feel a lot more comfortable playing a compact, rigid bank of 4-4-2 with maybe a few sideways passes and then just a few chance things on the break. So it's going to be really, really hard for Everton in this game. But I think if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah.
Just simply because he's the guy that everything's aimed at. He kind of he had an XG score reminiscent of Antonio in that West Brom game, where all the chances just pretty much just came underneath the crossbar. But we've seen this before with Calvert-Lewin. I've seen a lot in the media and on sort of in the fantasy community this week, sort of like, oh, whoa, I can't believe Calvert-Lewin's this good. But do we not remember how good he was at the start of Ancelotti's reign? It was a bit weird that he tailed off in Project Restart. But when Ancelotti first turned up, he had a good sort of 2-month spell where he was like in the top 5 in the league for shots in the box, big chances, shots on target, XG, all of that. So he's got that in his locker from the past, and he's obviously doing it again. So he for me is the best one because he seems to be the one that is always there to just gobble everything up in a team that is creating a lot of chances. So tough game to call. But if I had to pick one, it'd be Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah, I think this week we've given lots of options here. There's ones for the dullards. There's those that like differentials as well. I think Werner and KDB, up amongst them as well. But the likes of Salah as well, and the Everton assets possibly. And if you want to take a chance that Manchester United will improve, just looking at the fixtures, just before we go, I'll just mention a few others. If you fancy a differential here, Ings is up against a patched up Burnley back line, and he's on penalties now from Ward-Prowse, so that's worth considering. Bamford or Keach against Ramsdale. Now, Sheffield United are not looking good at the moment at the back, and Leeds, they just can't stop attacking. So good options there. Jimenez, old reliable. If you want to get 6 to 8 points guaranteed, just captain Jimenez against West Ham. There you go. Grealish or Watkins against Fulham. So Villa are improved. There's signings there. Grealish is staying for the time being, as far as we know. Well, should be long term according to his contract. But against Fulham could be verging as West Brom are to be whipping boys. So there are options there. I mean, these are they're no KDB, they're no Salah, they're no Werner. But if you fancy a differential captaincy, go for one of those ones. But before we go, I just want to mention the members area. Some of those stats we've been saying, a lot of the big chances, and all those stats with the whipping boys, expected goals conceded. A lot of these have come from Opta powered members area. There's lots of things going on there. The Rate My Team tool as well is very useful to have a look at your team to see whether you should be wildcarding or not, or just making a couple of changes here or there. And also there's lots of pro pundits content as well. Managers far better than us to discuss their captaincy choices as well. But in the meantime, David, thanks so much for joining me, and good luck with your captaincy decision this week.
Cheers, thanks very much, and the same to you, Joe.